What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be getting into my NFL Power Rankings video. Now, I know, just on the history of this channel, last year I did a full every team NFL predictions video. And then I usually wait for my Power Rankings right before week 1. But I have an announcement to make. I will be going away for 2 years from this channel on a mission. I will go more into depth on that, but so yeah, I'm going to make a predictions video of every team, just going by their standings of what I have, as well as this power rankings video. But yeah, it's going to be rough without making videos, but just wanted to let you guys know that's why I'm coming out with a power rankings video this early. But yeah, anyway, guys, let's get into this here. And that's going to start out with the worst team, worst to best in this power rankings. Still the same tiers. We got contenders, top of the top, a team that I could very much see win the Super Bowl, playoffs team, a team that I'm not betting to win the Super Bowl right now, but I think they should at least, should make the playoffs. I think they're playoff caliber for sure. In the hunt are teams that I think are very much in the mix to make the playoffs this year. Decent teams I think could be in the hunt, but I think they have some ways to go to get there. And yeah, I'm not sure about them right now. And then bad teams, I'm going to be honest, I just don't see these teams really doing much this year. So yeah, that's going to start out with the bad tier. And the worst team in the NFL, in my opinion, is the number 32 New England Patriots. I don't know what's going to happen with Drake May this year, but in my opinion, they should sit Drake May, because this offense, you look at it, it's just bad. It's just not a good offense, man. The weapons aren't good. The O-line is not good. I don't really trust their offensive coordinator that they brought in. I just don't know about New England's offense at all. I think if Drake May, who I'm very high on as a prospect, gets thrown into it, he could be a bust. We see it time and time again with QBs when they're put into the wrong situations. Now, the defense is pretty good, but it's not going to be enough for them to win football games. I'm looking at that offense. It's the worst in the league. The defense is all right. That's what led to the worst team in the league. Now, last year I had the Cardinals as the worst team in the league. I thought that was by far and away the worst team in the league. Patriots, not really on that same level where I think they're by far and away the worst team. I think they're very much in the mix for all these teams. All these teams in the bad tier could be the worst, in my opinion. And obviously, the Cardinals surprised me last year, which usually the worst team isn't actually the worst team. But 31, we got the Denver Broncos. And now the Broncos. I'm not sure about Denver going into this year. I think this is a gap year for the Broncos, and I think Sean Payton knows it. They let go of a lot of players, most notable being Russell Wilson in the offseason. They had to eat up all that dead cap. That gave them little to no room to work with. Their defense digressed, their offense digressed, and now they're throwing in Bo Nix, a rookie QB, into the fire. So I just don't know about the Denver Broncos. They do have some weapons like Courtland Sutton. They got a lot of good young players, but at this time, do I really expect those young players to be anything special at the wide receiver room? I'm not sure. The O-line was, it was not as bad as that first year with Russell Wilson last year, but not the best either. So I'm concerned about that. The defense, like I said, I think they lost some assets on that side of the ball, and most notably being Justin Simmons. So I'm not sure about the Broncos at this time. I think, like I said, this is a gap year for them. I do think they'll be pretty bad at the top for the first overall pick, but I could see Bo Nix balling out this year and being a good, decent QB. But I do have Broncos at 31. Then 30, we got the Washington Commanders. The first three teams here have 3 rookie QBs. The other rookie QB who will be starting is Caleb Williams. And I'm just, spoiler alert, he's going to be a little bit more up here, not going to be in this tier. But anyway, we got Washington getting Jaden Daniels, which I think was the wrong pick. I think they could have gone for Drake May. With Drake May, I think they're more of a decent team. I'm just not sure if Jaden Daniels is pro ready, honestly. He has a lot of accuracy. He's good with accuracy. He's good running, but he has some more strength questions. He doesn't have the best pocket presence, in my opinion. There's just a lot of things to be concerned there with Jaden Daniels, and he's an older guy. And he was at LSU with one of the best offenses in the entire college football. He's basically on easy mode the whole season. So you can't really trust any of this Caleb or this Jaden Daniels, some of this Jaden Daniels tape, because it's just too easy for him. He's like, I'll easily get Malik Neighbors there or Brian Thomas Jr. So I went on a whole rant on Jaden Daniels in my draft grades videos. So I'm not going to go too in depth there. I just didn't think that was the right pick. But you look at that team around him, it's a bad O-line. I'm going to be honest. The O-line's very concerning for Washington, but they got weapons. Most notably, obviously, being Scary Terry. So you got to give them that. The defense, they did make some acquisitions in the offseason, but remember, they lost a lot of players to trade. So I think this team's getting a little too overhyped, honestly. It's still not a good football team. I think they're about the same as what they'll be last year, like a 4 or 5 win team, honestly. But maybe Jaden Daniels can surprise me. And then 29, we got the Giants and the New York Giants getting Malik Neighbors in the draft. That's the big accusation that they got. Other than that, though, I mean, the Giants' offense is a long way to go. The O-line, it's very bad. Honestly, they didn't really get too many help there. The defense is good. I'll give them that. Especially adding Brian Burns to that defense. The defense is what has them up here. Now, also, they lost Saquon, which is notable for them for sure. So, I'm not sure. I do believe in Brian Daboll as a coach. But this Giants team with Daniel Jones at QB, who I'm not particularly, fan of Daniel Jones or a believer in him. I just don't know how this offense is going to look. Now, I do think they have the best defense of any of these teams, which does give them an edge. I think that's why they're at the top of this tier. But like I said, I just don't trust this offense right now. And again, I think they're trying to build up this offense, see what Daniel Jones has in this next year. You paid him a lot of money. You got to give him at least another chance. If it doesn't work out, you have a high pick. You can take a QB in the next year's draft. So that's, I think, the Giants' plan. I like the plan. A lot of these teams, especially like the Broncos, and I think should be the Patriots, should be taking gap years to see what their team's about and move on for in next year or a couple of years actually get more serious with this. All right, but that's the bad tier. Now we get to the decent tier, and that's going to start out with number 28, Tennessee. And Tennessee, I think they made some accusations, obviously getting Calvin Ridley in the offseason. Brian Callahan comes in, but I really don't like that O-line. I want to stress that. I don't think J.C. Latham was a good pick in the first round for them. It's a rough O-line, but I do believe in Will Levis. I think he showed a lot of good things for Tennessee. They're close to being in the bad tier. I'm going to slightly give them decent because I think that the Titans have a winning culture. Now, obviously, Mike Vrabel's gone, so honestly, I might be talking my way to putting them back into the bad tier. But like I said, they got some good weapons. They got Will Levis. You know what? I think I'm going to move this team to bad, honestly. I think they're more in this mix with these other 4 teams. So we are moving a team back down. But yeah, like I said, I think they're at the top of this tier. A decent defense. a horrible O-line in my opinion, but some weapons for Will Levis to work with, and obviously they lost Derrick Henry, which was a big loss, but Tennessee, I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean, they're an interesting team, but yeah, I think that bad tier is probably a good spot for them because I don't know what Brian Callahan's going to look like here. If it was a Mike Vrabel-led football team, I would say, yeah, decent because Mike Vrabel usually has a winning culture, but obviously Vrabel's gone. So it's interesting for Tennessee for sure, but I'm going to put them in bad. All right, now we'll start out the decent tier. And yes, that's going to be 27, the Carolina Panthers. And I'm going to call my shot here. I'm going to say that Bryce Young is going to be the next, or sorry, I meant Bryce Young's going to take steps this year. They completely retooled this offense in the offseason. Drafted a wide receiver with Xavier Legette in the first round. Got a lot of other weapons out there in the draft and in free agency that they're trying to build around with Bryce Young. Completely, honestly, retooled this O-line a lot. Not completely, but they retooled it a lot. Brought in a new coach. His name's slipping my mind. But the Buccaneers offensive coordinator that went there. Also worked with Russell Wilson and Geno Smith as a QB coach. So that's big for Bryce Young. So I think that Bryce Young's much more set to have a better year than last year. That's a hotter take. I know they lost Brian Burns, but it still honestly wasn't the worst defense last year. I don't think losing Burns will change too much. So I don't think the defense will be as good, but I think it'll be a decent defense. I think the offense takes some steps. So, yeah, for this one, I'm calling my shot that the Panthers aren't going to be a bad football team. I think they'll win probably like 6 games or 7 or something. Be a little bit of a friskier team this season. So, I don't think Panthers fans will be mad about that at all. So, yeah, that's the Panthers. Then we get to the Raiders at 26. And the Raiders are an interesting football team. I didn't really like their free agency that much, honestly. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I think they had some opportunities to really kind of help this team. They were very competitive at the end of the year. I think they could have taken some steps to be a good football team this year. Now, maybe they're taking some precautions, trying to take this rebuild slowly and not rush into things, which I respect, but yeah, I mean, the Raiders are a decent team. That's all I can really put it. They got Crosby, they got Adams, they got playmakers, obviously taking Meyer in the first round. Just like last year, they got weapons, but whoever their quarterback's going to be, Gardner Minshew, I don't think, Gardner Minshew, I'll give him credit. He'll be a decent to below average QB for this team, which is fine, but like I said, it's not going to win them a Super Bowl. I don't think it'll make them to the playoffs. Could they sneak into the playoffs in a very good AFC? I don't think it'll happen, but I could maybe see it. But I don't think they're going to be into that tier. So the Raiders are an interesting football team. I could see them being good, but I really don't see them being great. That's what I'm trying to say with the Raiders. All right, and then we got the 25th team, the Arizona Cardinals. And Kyler Murray now fully healthy. I'm going to be honest, the Cardinals could be a very scary team on the offensive side of the ball, especially adding Marvin Harrison Jr. Their O-line's gotten better. The rebuild really started a couple years ago, ever since they fired their old coach, Cliff Kingsbury. Have kind of built up this O-line a little bit more. It's kind of getting better and better as the years have gone on. Wide receivers, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., who's an elite prospect in himself. He put up outstanding numbers in the only really weapon on that Ohio State team. So, you got to give credit to Marvin Harrison Jr. there as a weapon. But yeah, I mean, the Arizona Cardinals, it's really about Kyler Murray here, that could make them into the playoffs tier. When Kyler Murray was in the 2021-2020 season, he was a very, very good QB. If we can get that kind of Kyler Murray in Arizona, it could be a good season for this team. Now, I'm not betting on that. I'm not betting that this team's going to make that because of the holes they still got. Remember, this is still a rebuild for Arizona. They got holes on the defense. They got a lot of holes. They still have some holes in that O-line. So, there's still some work to be done, but I did like Gannon's first year in the Cardinals as the Cardinals coach. So I think they could be a sneaky team this year. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna still put them in this decent tier. So yeah, a very small, decent tier here, but we have a massive in the hunt here. So let's get into this here. Starting out with number 24, we got the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints, funky team, man. Derek Carr, O-line questions. But they have weapons, wide receiver. So I really don't know what to expect with this Saints offense. I'm going to believe that they're going to be very similar to last year, though, to be honest. I don't think Derek Carr is the long-term option. I honestly think the Saints should have blown it up this year and started a rebuild. But here they go again, trying to sneak into the playoffs. Their edge room is getting very much older. I think it's a position they need to look at in the future. I honestly think this D-line is getting really up there in age. Now, it's always a decent secondary, though, for the Saints, so that's what they have for them, but I'm not too high on the Saints heading into this year. We'll see what happens. Obviously, they do deserve to be in this tier. They're in the weakest division in football, I still believe, is the NFC South. And, they have a winnable team there. They can win games with the players they got. But, like I said, is that the best move for the Saints, who have been going at this for 10-plus years now? I'm not sure. I think their window is clearly shut at a Super Bowl. I think they should rebuild, but you never know with the Saints. And then 23, we got the Falcons. The Falcons here, I think, are getting major overhyped. I didn't like their draft. Free agency. They got Raheem Morris, which is a decent hire. But, their defense really didn't improve that much. They do have those weapons on the offense side of the ball. It's a very elite weaponry. But they have a new offensive coordinator in there. Can he take advantage of them? And you spent your 8th pick taking Penix. So he's not going to start for you. Kirk Cousins is coming off an injury. The Falcons are a team that I think has is a very boom or bust type team this year. Every year we look at the Falcons and they're a type of team that we want to hype up because of their weaponry, and because of, what they made in the off season, the moves they make. But they always come up short. And I know there's a new coach in there, but I'm not sure if I trust the Falcons to be that kind of a team this year. I just don't. We'll see what happens, though. They are in the hunt because I can't see this team being the winner of the NFC South, and I can't see some things happening there. But I'm not sure that this Falcons team is going to be any much better than what they were last year, honestly, because of the Kirk Cousins injuries that he had. Now, you could throw in Michael Penix there. I think some more pro-ready QB that can't be good. But, yeah, I did not like the Roku pick. I think Jarzine Newton could have been a much better pick for them. But this isn't a draft video. This is the Falcons. Their defense is decent. Their offense has a lot of weaponry. Could they win the division? Absolutely, but I'm not betting on that. Like I said, it's the Atlanta Falcons. You really don't know what you're going to get from them. All right, 22, the Bears. Caleb Williams and the Bears get into this in the hunt tier. And, yeah, the Bears, man. I'm more excited about the Bears than I was last year. I thought last year They were getting way overhyped with Justin Fields and that team. This year, I was a big believer in Caleb Williams coming out. I think he could be something special as a QB. You know, I think that the Bears, man, they got a great player. Now, I know the Bears have a rich history of not being able to hit on QBs, but just maybe this one's different for Chicago. And then obviously, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. This is a completely different weaponry than they had a couple years ago. Obviously, a good tight end with Kmet as well. So, the Bears offense, the O-line, they have much improved from the early days of the Justin Field era. It's been a rebuild for the Bears on the offensive side of the ball. I think they're finally ready to go after it. Defensively, it's a good defense, I think, with Eberflus calling the shots. I think they have a lot of potential to be a really solid defense this year. The reason why they're lower, though, is because it's a rookie QB. It's an offense that we don't really know about. There's a lot of good teams ahead of them as well that I'm a little more, safer putting above them. But I could have called my shots and put the Bears higher as, this team's going to make the playoffs, which I think they very much could. But it's a whole new team. We'll see what happens. Shane Waldron is their offensive coordinator. As a Seahawks fan, I was underwhelmed with his season this year, but he did have some other better years. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the Bears. The Bears fans have reason to be excited for sure, but again, not as much of an emphasis as last year, but I do say pump the brakes a little bit. Just see what this year brings for the Bears. We'll see what happens, but very much like what the Bears did this offseason to improve their team. And then 21, we do have the Jaguars. Jaguars, if this team didn't collapse last year, it could be a very much better team. But I just don't really know about Doug Peterson's Jaguars squad, the offense, really the weapons. I know they brought in Brian Thomas Jr., but it's an all right weaponry for Trevor Lawrence. It's an all right O-line. And then you got Trevor Lawrence, who really has to prove that he is that franchise QB for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And with that offense, I'm not sure he will. Not saying he can't. He was one of the best prospects coming out for a reason. But it's been a while now. It's in a big year for him. We'll see what happens. And the defense, you got Josh Allen. You got playmakers. I think that's their better unit. I think it's a good defense, but they're in a tough now NFC South, I think, with Colts and Texans, who have better teams than the Jaguars right now. So, Jaguars, a very similar team to the Bears, where I think they have a lot of high potential, but again, I'm pumping my brakes on the Jaguars. We'll see what happens with that team. And then 20, we got the Minnesota Vikings, adding J.J. McCarthy to their team. And if J.J. McCarthy is a great QB, forgot about J.J. McCarthy. So actually, yeah, the Vikings are the best team here with their rookie QB right there. But yeah, Justin Jefferson, Addison. Those are great weapons. T.J. Hawkins is on the. T.J. Hawkins is on the Vikings. I'm getting all mixed up with the Lions, but yeah, great weaponry for J.J. McCarthy. We said it, that Kevin O'Connell's system will very much heavily favor a QB like J.J. McCarthy, who was a straight-up winner in college. So I think J.J. McCarthy has a lot of traits to be great in the league. I don't think he's just a game manager type. In that offense, he could be very good. So we'll see what happens. And then the Brian Flores defense, I think with Brian Flores calling the shots, that defense already has a higher floor. And the reason why this team is up there, I think, in the hunt is really a lot to do with coaching with Flores and O'Connell. Those are two excellent coaches on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And that's a reason. Obviously, they got great weaponry, but like I said, the main reason is coaching. I really trust that coaching staff. If J.J. McCarthy can be a top 15 QB in the league, watch out for the Vikings this year. All right, 19, we got the Chargers. And the Chargers are another interesting team. They obviously lost a lot of players, especially on the offense, to free agency. It really gives you concerns about what this Chargers offense is going to look like. But I think what's something that's being slept on is they got 2 franchise tackles now, getting Joe Alt, adding to that O-line. So I think it's going to be a great O-line. And remember, this is Jim Harbaugh. Look what he did for those Niner teams a while ago. I really trust Jim Harbaugh as a coach, and that's another reason why I have the Chargers up here. Then you've got Justin Herbert as a QB, which we all know what Justin Herbert can do. So you're protecting Justin Herbert. I know the weaponry is concerning. You got Ladd McConkey, and that's just about it that they really made in free agency. And then you obviously have their wide receiver they took last year, who I'm a fan of, but had a rough year. So yeah, the Jim Harbaugh era is gonna try and build through the trenches. They got some solid defensive line players. The defense isn't anything that's gonna wow you, but again, it's led by Jim Harbaugh. We'll see what happens. I'm interested to see what happens with the Chargers at 19, but again, like some of these teams that I've mentioned, there's just a lot of unknown variables there with Los Angeles. We'll see on them. They're very much your typical in the hunt team where we'll see what happens with them. All right, 18, we got Tampa Bay. And they're actually going to be in the playoffs tier because they're the best team in the NFC South. But yeah, the Buccaneers do get the first playoffs here in the playoffs tier. They are the best team in the NFC South, in my opinion, and that does come down to the culture that this team has built there. Now, they did lose their prized offensive coordinator, which could be a big loss for Baker Mayfield and this offense. Now, could we see a similar situation to like Daniel Jones? There's a lot of similarities to the Giants and the Bucks. When you talk about that 2022 Giants team and this 2023 Bucks team heading into their next years. Baker Mayfield got the big contract extension. Daniel Jones got the big contract extension. And then those teams kind of got injured, kind of fell off the rails. But Mike Evans comes back. You got Chris Godwin. You got some weapons for the Buccaneers. The O-line got some good tackles. The interior obviously is questionable. It has been for the past few years. But it's a decent offense. Like I said, the big question mark is that offensive coordinator right now for them. And then the defense getting a little bit up there. It's not the same defense we saw in that Super Bowl run, but it's still a decent defense. And the reason why I trust the Bucks more than I do the Falcons and the Saints is because of the culture they built. They've won this division 3 straight years. They've been a great team in this division. They always seem to be a good football team that's competitive, and that's been a big part in winning this division. When those Saints and Falcons and Panthers teams have had a lot of iffy things, the Buccaneers seem to be a much more consistent team. So that's why I'm going to give credit to the Buccaneers this year. Last year was lower on them. I had them at the bad tier heading into the year when they lost Brady. But I'm going to give credit to the Buccaneers right now and put them at the top of the NFC South. All right, 17, we got the Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams coming off the loss to the Lions. They lose Aaron Donald's the big factor here. It's still a very young team, and with Sean McVay as the coach, a coach that I very much underestimated last season. I had this team in the bad tier, very similar to the Bucks. I'm not going to make that same mistake. Now, I really hope they're bad. As a Seahawks fan, I am not a fan of the Rams whatsoever. But you've got Matthew Stafford. You've got, most importantly, Sean McVay, who can work around with this young talent, built that culture there that really just finds the hidden gems in this team. It seems like year in and year out, the Puka Nakuas of the world. Hopefully Cooper Kupp, for their sake, can stay healthy this year. And then the defense. It's been a lot of young players heading in and out each year for the Los Angeles Rams. They have those young players that they're developing, and they from last year that were very solid. So yeah, I mean, really coaching has a big factor to this for the Rams. I don't think this is going to be a bad football team by any means this year. I think they will be in the mix. Now, I don't think this is a playoff team. They really went on a run last year. I don't think they do that this year. I think there's some better teams in the NFC than this team. So that's where I have the Rams at 17. All right, 16, we got the Colts at Indianapolis. Indianapolis, very interesting team to see what this team does. Adding Anthony Richardson. Got to stay healthy. I think he will. It's a good whole line for the Colts. You obviously got Michael Pittman coming back this year, and adding additional weapons to that wide receiver core. Tight ends they added in free agency. That offense, I obviously got Jonathan Taylor still there. That offense has potential to be scary if Anthony Richardson can play like that Anthony Richardson we saw at the beginning of his rookie year. Now, even with Gardner Minshew, this team was very solid, right in the mix to beat the Texans, who would end up going to the to win a playoff game. I'm excited to see what the Colts can be. I could see this team being a very good team this year. I'm much more high on the Colts than teams I am like the Jaguars, the Bears, and the Falcons, who I think have a lot more lower floors. I really actually like the Colts floor. I'm pretty confident this is going to be a good team. They got a really good coach down there. And that defense is solid. So that's my reasoning for the Colts at 16. It's a tough AFC. We're going to see some AFC names coming up here shortly. But, the Colts, we'll see what happens with them. I could very much see them going on a run and making the playoffs in Anthony Richardson's sophomore season. But then 15, we got the New York Jets. And the Jets at 15, Aaron Rodgers is coming back. A lot of unknown variables, though, with a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles tear. And that is a massive reason why the Jets are down here in the hunt tier. So, I just want to get that out to start out. The offense, they've improved. I really like the Olu pick. Improved that O-line this offseason. You got Garrett Wilson. Now, the wide receivers aren't the best outside of Garrett Wilson. But if you can get a good Aaron Rodgers, it won't really matter too much. So the Jets are putting all of their cards into Aaron Rodgers right now. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers can pay back on that investment. But we'll see what happens. And then you obviously have the defense, who over the past few years has been one of the best defenses in the league, with one of them arguably the best corner in Sauce Gardner. A very good defensive line. Linebackers that are solid. So, you can't really overharp on the experience of that defense that the Jets have built together. It's been a position, that defense has been, a massive emphasis for the Jets to continue to build up and be that strong point of the team for Salah and that Jets team. The Jets, like I said, though, it really goes on Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers, if they're having that QB play that's just bad, this team will be like we've seen over the past years. But if Aaron Rodgers can be a top 15 QB, we could see some special things. The Jets, I think, could be a very good playoff team. If he's an Aaron Rodgers that we know, watch out for this team to be a contender. So we'll see what happens with New York. But like I said, another one of these teams that I'm just like, pump the brakes. There's a lot of good teams that I'm more, confident on, that are going to be better teams. I need to see it for me to believe it with the Jets. But then 14, we got the Bills, who are going to round out the in the hunt tier here. They, in my opinion, are a in the hunt team. Now, the Bills are a type of team that you got Josh Allen, so you have that elite QB in the building, but it was clearly evident how much pieces they lost on offense with Stephon Diggs, and offensive linemen, and wide receivers. Which getting into the draft, they had like no weapons to speak of for Josh Allen, no valuable ones on the wide receiver room. Some decent tight ends there, but that's about it on that end. And then on defense, they lost some critical pieces, especially in the secondary. So, really also need Von Miller to step up here for the Bills. So, Josh Allen completely takes this team up to the top, top half of the league. That's enough, I think, for them to be at the top half of the league. Is it enough, in my opinion, for them to be a playoff team in the tough AFC, which I think they very much could be? It could be enough, but I don't think it's going to be enough to be a contender this year for the Buffalo Bills. They just don't have the whole team to be that way. And Josh Allen, I know Patrick Mahomes has done it, but I just don't think Josh Allen is on the same level as Mahomes is. So we'll see what happens with the Bills. Right now, I think they're at 14, just missing out of this playoffs tier. All right, so let's get to the playoffs tier. We got number 13, the Dallas Cowboys. And Dallas, they're going to be in the playoffs tier, very similar to the Bills. Lost a lot of assets this offseason. Didn't make a whole lot of moves for the Cowboys. Now, they do have Dak Prescott. They got a good CD Lamb. Some decent wide receivers in there. Obviously, a great offensive line. I know they lost some guards there, but still, I think that'll be a good offensive line. And then you got Micah Parsons. You got the core pieces. You just don't really have the surrounding cast, I think, for the Cowboys to be as good in the regular season as they were last year. I really think that with the AFC East or the NFC East just seeming always to flip around who is the top team, I think the Cowboys will not win the NFC East this year. I think it will go down to the Eagles. But, I think they have a division other than the Eagles that is very easy. I think they will make the playoffs in this NFC conference. The next team, in my opinion, they're very close to the next team we'll get to, and the Rams, who is another team threatening to be a playoff team over them. But, the Cowboys are going to be a weird team heading into this year. We'll see what happens with them. Cowboys are always seem to be good in the regular season. They have a good team, so that's why they do deserve to be in the playoff tier. Number 12, we got the Seattle Seahawks right there. And the Seahawks head into this tier with an interesting team. Interior O-line, they addressed it with Christian Haynes, I think. At least one guard position, but other than that, that's their biggest weakness on the offense. You look at that whole other offense, a lot of weapons. Geno Smith, I think, was getting very much underrated here. I think he's going to be a very good QB for the Seahawks this year. And you got Kenneth Walker, who's one of the best running backs in the league, in my opinion. So, as a Seahawks fan, I really like the offense. You brought in the Washington offensive coordinator. I think he'll be great for Seattle. A lot of good pieces on that offensive side of the ball. The defense has a lot of ways to go, but bringing in Mike Macdonald, I have immense faith in what he brings to the table, in the mind he has. You look at those Ravens season they had. It was really, really freaking good, man. He used a lot of weapons. So that Ravens team, he really put some players, developed them and put them on the scene. And they were players because of Mike Macdonald on the Ravens. So I know that Ravens defense has always been pretty solid before him, but he really brought it to the table. And he's a young mind. I really like what he brings. And for the Seahawks, that's really why I think this team is going to be up there. I really trust Mike McDonald as a coach. I trust Geno Smith I trust what he can do with the talent they have on the defense side of the ball. Seattle's always had talent on that side of the ball. It's just they never seem to get by it with it. It always seems to be like, just kind of poor tackling abilities and stuff. But this year, I think the Seahawks will take steps and be a good playoff team. I know that might be a little biased, but I'm going to put my bet on that for Seattle. All right, number 11, we got the Browns. Interesting conversation, obviously, with Deshaun Watson. Just like last year, can Deshaun Watson be the QB? I'm losing faith he can be that elite QB. Can he at least be like a top 20 QB for the Browns? Just like Joe Flacco was. Can they at least ask for that? Because you look at this offensive line, it's elite. You look at that wide receiver core, great. Nick Chubb is coming back from an injury. That defense is arguably the best in the league, led by Myles Garrett. So Deshaun Watson needs to figure things out. I think even if Watson's like a mid QB, this team is a playoff team because of the talent they have. Deshaun Watson needs to figure things out, though. So the Browns 11, very unfortunate end in the playoffs for them last year, but I do still believe in that roster. And then 10, we got the Steelers with the QB duo of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. This is with the scenario of Russell Wilson as the QB. I think that's probably where it's going to shake up to be. He finished off the year very strong with the Denver Broncos, led them on that 6-game winning streak or whatever it was. So I really trust him. I think this is a better situation than he had in Denver. I think it's a better O-line. The Steelers are working on that O-line. A really heavy emphasis on the draft. They got George Pickens, of course, who's a good wide receiver, very Courtland Sutton-esque, who can be his Courtland Sutton replacement. And then that defense always solid for the Steelers. Now, I think the team overall for the Browns is better than the Steelers. I'm going to be honest, though, I trust the QB more with Russell Wilson than I do Deshaun Watson. As crazy as that sounds for some people, but don't forget the kind of QB that Russell Wilson is. He's a great player, and I think he'll do good for the Steelers. So I think that the Steelers do deserve to be in the top 10 here. With the moves they made, I really liked their free agency that they got. And the draft. The draft was solid. Then number 9, we got the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins with Tua on his final year on his rookie deal. We'll see what happens with Tua, but can Tua be that guy? It's another question into this year. This year you really just gotta see. He's shown it in the regular season. You gotta see it in the postseason though from him to get this team at least a playoff victory. The offense adding OBJ to that wide receiver core, it's arguably the best 3 wide receivers in the league. It's hard to really argue with that. I mean, the Seahawks have a really good one as well, but it's hard to argue with that. Obviously there's a lot of good ones, but I think the Dolphins have the best one. The O-line, though, I'm honestly really concerned about that O-line for the Dolphins. Really a lot of positions that they got there. Really need to figure that out. The defensive line, I think they're concerned about, but especially letting go of some players. So this team really is running on the Tua Tagovailoa, that wide receiver core they got, and their coach that they got. So, we'll see what happens with the Miami Dolphins this year. I think their overall roster talent did take a step back. I do think they can still be a good team. We'll just see if they can take that step this year. And then we got the number 8 team, the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers, heading into this year, coming off that crazy playoffs. It was crazy. You got to give credit there. Their defense has really developed for the Packers with a lot of young players, man. Firing Joe Barry, I think that was the right move. They got a better defensive coordinator in there for Green Bay that can really hone into this team. Um, and yeah, the Green Bay Packers offensively with Jordan Love, I really like his talent that he brings. I think he'll be a great QB for the Packers again this season. I believe he got a contract. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but Jordan Love I think will be very good. Um, and then you look at that defense, or sorry, those not we already talked about the defense, but the weapons, young. Hopefully Christian Watson can stay more healthy this year, but if he's playing, he's great. The O-line, you do have some question marks, but other than that, yeah, the Green Bays have a very complete team. Still a young team, though. That's why I do have them into the playoffs tier, not the contenders tier. But, I like what the Packers made, their moves this year. So, in free agency. So, yeah, I got Green Bay at 8. Number 7, we got the Eagles. In the playoffs tier here, Eagles are a team that very much has potential to be contenders. But I am going to slip them into the playoffs tier. You just look at the Eagles and you look at their collapse last year. That gives me worry. Other than that, though, they made moves this offseason. Losing out on Kelsey does hurt. But you got Jalen Hurts. You got that wide receiver core. You got a great team in Philadelphia offensively. Coaching is obviously a question. But they killed the draft again. They were my favorite draft of this whole season. So you got to give credit where credit's due to the Eagles. The reason why they're not in the contenders is very much due to that collapse. They just look like a completely different team to finish off the year. We'll see if they can avenge that heading into this year. And then number 6, last team of the playoffs here, we got the Houston Texans. I would probably throw the Packers in this conversation, but yeah, especially these two teams I think are very close to being contenders with the moves the Texans made in free agency. One of the quickest, along with the Packers, one of the quickest rebuilds I have in recent memory, from worst to first for the Houston Texans with CJ Stroud. It's just crazy the progress that Texans team made last year. And then they get Stephon Diggs. You look at that wide receiver core. This team was able to dominate a very good Browns team and be competitive against the Ravens with that receiver core and that O-line. And with that defense that DeMeco Ryans had. Now they add talent to that defense. This team has potential to be a Super Bowl winner. Now, it's still a young team, though. You got to pump the brakes a little bit on immediately putting them in contenders. But like I said, I would not be complaining if you put Texans, Eagles, and maybe even the Packers in that contenders tier at this point. So, got to give credit where credit's due. That's where I have the Texans. So, yeah, we had a big cluster of these teams here, from the Texans to the Saints, who are all on different levels, but I think all could be mixed in here into the playoffs and in the hunt here. It's very, very big cluster there. But we do finish off here with the contenders tier. 5 teams, top 5, starting out with the 49ers at number 5. Niners, the Super Bowl losers, and the Niners, as a Seahawks fan, I do have to give them credit, though. Brock Purdy had a great season last year. They did make the Super Bowl. They got in a tremendous offense. Now, they do have some question marks on that interior O-line and cornerbacks. But other than that, the defense, I think, is going to take some step backs this season, as we saw last year. I don't think they'll be as good. But it's still, this 49ers team, led by Shanahan, will be the Niners. I think they will be a contender. I think they'll be at the top of the NFC West. Hopefully my Seahawks can do it this year, but I'm not going to bet on that. So the Niners, I think, will be at 5 as a team. I think they're at the bottom of this contenders tier. I like these teams above them a little more. But then number 4, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at 4. The Bengals coming off that Joe Burrow injury, I think they get him back. They're back at the contender. Now, they'll probably start up the year struggling as they always seem to do, but figure it out as the year goes on. That's just the Bengals for you. You look at that defense for the Bengals. Great defense. I think they'll step it up this year. Now they do lose Callahan, but I think that offense still will be great. They didn't really lose their wide receivers. I think that Joe Burrow still has some room to work with there. They improved the O-line to protect Burrow. This is going to be, I think, back to the 2 years ago Bengals team that we saw 3 years ago in the Super Bowl and 2 years ago in the AFC Championship game. I think it'll be a very good Bengals team under Joe Burrow if he stays healthy this year. And then 3, we got the Detroit Lions. The Lions here, I think, are going to be, at this point, the best team in the NFC. The moves they made were very aggressive in the draft and free agency to improve this team. They extend Jared Goff. They're going after all this year after what they had last year. This team was very close to making the Super Bowl as well to play the Chiefs. So you got to show them that. You can't just seem to always think the Niners are going to be at top. I think the Lions can dethrone them this year. If you take a look at that defense as well, it very much improved at corner. The edge, I think, will be just as good as it was last year. And the linebackers, the kneecapping, environment that they're running there. It'll be a good team for the Lions. I'm excited to see what they're going to be all about. This year, I think they'll be a contender for sure, like they were last year. And then we got number 2. We got the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens do losing Mike McDonald. Leaves me, if they add Mike McDonald and retain some of that defensive talent, I think this team is by far and away the best team in the league. But they did lose some pieces, and people have to realize that. This team also seems to never get over the edge in the playoffs, but last year I think was their best chance, but they still have a darn good football team this year that will be a contender, in my opinion, under Lamar Jackson. Now, they're in a very difficult division. I have all 4 AFC North teams in the playoffs tier, 3 of them in the top 10, the other one being at 11. So it's a tough division for the Ravens. They're going to get beat up in that division. But I think this is the best team overall in that division. And I think they have a lot of talent to go all the way this year. And then number 1, though, you have to go with the Chiefs. I mean, is there much else to say? They got Patrick Mahomes. They got a good defense. They got solid weapons. They got a solid O-line, and that's all they need to win Super Bowls and be the best team in the league under Andy Reid and the Chiefs. That's who is my number 1 team. So, yeah, that is the power rankings. Hopefully you all enjoyed the content. Gonna miss making these for you guys, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And anyway, guys, peace out.